Page 42. British establish Negev foothold. 4. A main military base has been established by the British at Rafah, at the southern border of Palestine. To ensure undivided control, the British authorities 3 days after the passage of the partition resolution by the United Nations General Assembly, which gave the Negev to the Jewish state, invited the Jews to evacuate the area. The ostensible reason was the inability of the British to protect the Jews against Arab aggression. The real reason was the desire of the British to hold the whole of the Negev as a base for themselves. Ask Jews to leave base area. On December 2, 1947, the British Assistant District Commissioner for the Gaza District, W.F.M. Clemens, informed the representatives of the Jewish settlements in the south that he could not see how Jews could be protected against Arab attack. He suggested the Jewish settlement south of Gaza Beersheba be transferred to the north of this road. 2 days later, on December 4, the Jewish representative was summoned by Brigadier Nelson, the commanding officer of Camp Julius, who reiterated the request for evacuation, again on the score that the Jews could not hold out against Arab attack even for a few minutes. The offer was declined. Thus far, the Jews have retained every settlement in the Negev, as elsewhere throughout Palestine. British government grants new concession to the Iraq Petroleum Company. 5. In March 1948, the British government granted a new concession to the Iraq Petroleum Company, in the form of a right to build a second pipeline terminating at Haifa. The Iraq Petroleum Company holds the exclusive concession to the oil fields of Iraq, Qatar, the Trucial Coast, Muscat, Oman. A 23.75% interest in the Iraq Petroleum is held by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, in which the British government owns 50% of the shares. Royal Dutch Shell, closely allied with British interests, holds a similar percentage. The French interests own 23.75%, and American interests, Saucony Vacuum and Standard Oil of New Jersey, 25%. 5% is owned by Participations and Investments, Limited. The excuse offered for the granting of this concession, for months after the United Nations decision, without consultation with the United Nations or the Palestine Commission, is that it represented the conclusion of discussions entered into in March of 1947. British representative says negotiations began before partition voted. On March 22, J. Fletcher Cook, British liaison officer for the Palestine Commission of the United Nations, informed Dr. Ralph J. Bunche, Principal Secretary for the United Nations, that the concession had been granted. Mr. Fletcher Cook pointed out that, but for the delay in deciding the question of principle referred to above, negotiations would probably have been completed before the partition plan was approved by the General Assembly of the United Nations, in which case the continued validity of any arrangement so made would have been assured under paragraph 3d of Chapter 3 of the plan. In his communication, the representative of the United Kingdom declared, "May I refer you to subparagraph A, proposed amendment to Iraq Petroleum Company's pipeline concession, of Section 6 concessions, of paragraph 2 of the note, submitted to the Commission on the January 21st, relating to certain matters to be discussed with the Commission at some stage." 2. In that note, the Commission were informed that negotiations with the company had been suspended owing to the fact that constitutional changes were pending. This matter has, however, been under constant consideration by His Majesty's government, and they have now decided that it is in the interests of the economic development of this area that the negotiations should be brought to a conclusion without further delay. Accordingly, His Majesty's government have authorized the High Commissioner to grant the company pipeline facilities as requested, i.e. for oil from Trans, page 43, Jordan, and also from 2 areas in Iraq, not covered by their existing pipeline convention with the government of Palestine, in return for an annual payment of £45,000. This sum will, therefore, represent an immediate addition to the assets of the government of Palestine. 3. It may be convenient if I recapitulate the past history of the matter. A. On the May 10, 1947, the Iraq Petroleum Company entered into an agreement with the government of Transjordan, whereby the company were authorized to undertake drilling operations in that country. B. The agreement provided that the company's drilling obligations should run from a date on which arrangements satisfactory to the company had been concluded between them and the government of Palestine covering the transit of any oil found in Transjordan through Palestine. C. As early as the March 17, 1947, The company raised with His Majesty's government the question of the free transit through Palestine of any oil found in Transjordan, as a result of their operations under the concession then under negotiation with the government of Transjordan. D. It was decided in principle that the government of Palestine had the right to make charges for pipeline facilities, and that the actual amount to be paid by the company should be negotiated between the government of Palestine and the company. E. The Iraq Petroleum Company were so informed and entered into negotiations with the government of Palestine accordingly. F. As a result of these negotiations, the company offered to pay £45,000 per annum. G. But for the delay in deciding the question of principle referred to above, negotiations would probably have been completed before the partition plan was approved by the General Assembly of the United Nations, in which case the continued validity of any arrangement so made would have been assured under paragraph 3d of Chapter 3 of the plan. H. The position under that paragraph has been explained to the company, who appreciate that the plan does not guarantee the continued validity of any agreement, which may now be made. 4. The Commission may be interested to know that although the Iraq Petroleum Company is registered in the United Kingdom, 23 3/4% of the capital is held by American interests, Near East Development Corporation, 23 3/4% by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, 23 3/4% by Royal Dutch Shell, 23 3/4% by Compagnie Française de Pétroles, and 5% by Participations and Investments Limited. Page 44. 16. The Nazi record of the leaders of the Arab revolt against the United Nations decision. All the top leaders engaged in the revolt against the United Nations decision on Palestine are Arabs formerly active with the Nazis in World War II. These include Haj Amin el-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, who is chairman of the Arab Higher Committee, now known as the Arab Higher Executive. Haj Amin el-Husseini, a full partner of the Axis before and during World War II. He is an escaped war criminal who found asylum in the place of the King of Egypt. Haj Amin el-Husseini has a long-time record of complicity with terrorism. Responsible for the Arab riots in Palestine in 1920, he fled to Transjordan to escape a 10-year sentence of imprisonment, returning only after complete amnesty had been granted. In 1922, he became the Mufti of Jerusalem and later the president of the Supreme Muslim Council, during which period he had at his disposal more than £100,000 a year. The Shaw Commission, appointed by the British government to investigate the 1929 riots, attributed to the Mufti a share in the responsibility for these riots, in which 133 Jews were killed and 239 wounded. No action was taken to curb his activities, with the result that in 1936, he again was responsible for new attacks upon the Jews of Palestine. At the same time, he caused the assassination of hundreds of prominent Arabs, including 24 leading Palestine Arabs, who refused to accept his leadership. The captured files of the German High Command in Flensburg at the war's end reveal that the Arab riots of 1936 in Palestine were carried out by the Mufti with funds supplied by the Nazis. The report states, "Only through funds made available by Germany to the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem was it possible to carry out the revolt in Palestine." Following his escape from Palestine to Syria and later to Iraq, he and his henchmen were directly responsible for the anti-Jewish pogrom, in which almost 400 Jewish men, women, and children were stabbed or brutally clubbed to death in the streets of Baghdad. An investigating committee appointed by the legitimate Iraq government, following its restoration after the revolt in 1941, declared that the causes of the disturbance are, in the opinion of the investigating committee, Nazi propaganda emanating from the following sources. 1. The German League. 2. The Mufti of Jerusalem and his henchmen, who followed him to Iraq. This man was accorded enthusiastic reception in Iraq, and has turned it to his own use to disseminate many-sided Nazi propaganda. His influence on government and army circles became so strong that he could give orders to his group to set to work to spread anti-Jewish and anti-British propaganda among all classes of the population. Organized Iraqi revolt. In Iraq, the Mufti's first undertaking was to help organize the Iraqi revolt with Jamal el-Husseini, now vice-chairman of the Arab Higher Committee, as his chief of staff. After the failure of the Iraqi revolt, the Mufti escaped to Tehran and found refuge in the Japanese embassy. From there he escaped to Italy. In October 1941, he conferred with Mussolini, Ciano, and Dino Alfieri. From Rome, he communicated with Balkan Muslims, under Italian rule in Yugoslavia and Albania. In November 1941, he went to Berlin. The Nazis established a special office for him in Berlin entitled Bureau de Gros Mufti, with branches organized later in other parts of Germany and Italy. His activities included propaganda, espionage, organization of Muslim military units in Axis-occupied countries, and in page 45, North Africa and Russia, establishment of Arab legions in an Arab brigade, and organization of fifth column activities in the Middle East, including sabotage and parachutist expeditions. In the course of his propaganda work, the Grand Mufti had at his disposal not only the German-controlled radio, but radio stations in Bari, Rome, Tokyo, and Athens. In addition, he was responsible for sending to the Middle East various propaganda publications in Arabic. Espionage. His espionage service extended throughout the Middle East. He had a sub-office in Geneva, linking him to Egypt and Turkey, and another in Istanbul, branching out all along the Syrian-Turkish frontier in Mersin, Alexandretta, Antioch, Adana, and Diyarbakir. These stations received information directly from the Mufti's agents in Palestine, Syria, and Iraq, and maintained close contact with members of the German intelligence in Turkey. Parachutist and Sabotage School. In Athens, the Mufti established a parachutist and sabotage school for Arabs. In The Hague, under his direction, Arab students were trained in wireless transmission, high explosives, and demolitions. The Mufti's agents were parachuted into Palestine, Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. A number of them were caught by the British. On a number of occasions, these agents, with the help of local Arabs, cut telephone and pipelines in Transjordan and Palestine, and sabotaged railways and bridges in Iraq. Muslim Nazi military units. Another of the Mufti's accomplishments was the organization of Muslim military units. He attempted to recruit for the German military command some 500,000 soldiers from Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. In Asiatic Russia, he collaborated with Muslim Russian Quislings and White Russian traders whom he helped to form pro-Axis legions. In 1942, he started to organize Axis Arab legions from among Arab students in Germany and Arab prisoners of war who followed him to Germany. His legionnaires wore the German uniform with Free Arabia patches on their shoulders. After the Jewish Brigade had been recognized by Winston Churchill in 1944, the Mufti, on November 2nd, with the consent of Ribbentrop, called upon all Arabs in Germany hailing from Palestine, Iraq, Egypt, and Syria to join the Arab Brigade. Accepting a proposal of the Japanese that he broadcast to Muslims in the South Pacific and India, the Mufti recorded numerous broadcasts which were beamed to India, Indonesia, and Java. Not the least of his accomplishments was his part in pushing the extermination of the Jews by the Nazis. Jamal el-Husseini. Jamal el-Husseini, vice chairman of the Arab Higher Executive and its representative at the United Nations, is a cousin of the Mufti and was for many years his chief of staff. Since 1935, he has been the head of the Palestine Arab Party, the Mufti's party. He was the closest associate of the Mufti in organizing the 1936 to 1939 rebellion in Palestine. In 1939, he fled Palestine, joined the Mufti in Baghdad, and helped him to organize the pro-Axis Fifth Column in Iraq, which culminated in the Iraqi Rebellion of 1941 against the British at one of the most crucial periods in the Allied war against the Axis. Jamal Husseini fled from Baghdad en route to Tehran, but was captured there by the British before he could make good his escape. He was placed in internment in Rhodesia as a dangerous pro-Axis leader, and he spent 4 years until he was released by the British in February 1946, under the pressure of the Arab League, and allowed to return to Palestine. Emil Gori. Emil Gori is the new field commander of the Arab Army, operating in the Jerusalem area. Gori, a member of the Arab Higher Executive, has long been active in extremist Arab politics in Palestine. After the dissolution of the Arab Higher Committee in 1937, he was exiled and moved to Egypt. Page 46. And Iraq. In Iraq, he worked with the Mufti as a member of his Foreign Relations Committee in charge of propaganda. A report of the British General Service of Intelligence, on December 1, 1941, listed Emil Gori as one of a group who are responsible for propaganda, intrigue, and subversive activities inside and outside Iraq. Ghori was permitted to return to Palestine in 1941 on condition that he would not engage in politics. This condition, however, has not been met. He has been a member of each of the 3 Arab higher committees named since 1941, and is the political editor of the Husseini daily Al-Wada. He is the organized and political leader of the underground Arab army, and is alleged to be one of those responsible for internal terror against Arab opponents of the Mufti. He advocates that all Jews who came to Palestine since 1918 be regarded as foreigners and be deprived of rights in an independent Arab Palestine. Fawzi Qawuqji. Fawzi Qawuqji, appointed by the Arab League Palestine commander of the Arab Liberation Army recruited in the Arab states, has a long-time record of association with violence, with the Mufti, and with Nazism. And, in fact, the British had a price on his head. A native of Tripoli, Qawuqji was graduated from the Ottoman Military Academy with the rank of Captain of Cavalry and served with the Turks in World War I until its end. It was during this period that he made his friendships with the Germans and learned to speak German fluently. Subsequently, he served in Syria first with King Faisal, the brother of King Abdullah of Transjordan, and later with native troops under the French. In 1925 to 1927, he played a leading role in the Syrian revolt against the French, for which he was sentenced to death by the French. Fleeing the country, he settled in Iraq and was appointed as a cavalry instructor in the military academy. From Iraq, he made his way to Palestine in August of 1936, at the head of an Iraq force of several hundred, in order to fight with the Palestine Arabs against the British and the Jews. He was then appointed commander-in-chief of all the Arab armed gangs controlled by the Arab Higher Committee. Although he spent only 2 months in Palestine at this stage, he tried to organize the Arab gangs on a military basis, to introduce regular military training, and to standardize the ranks of commander under his supreme control. He also made an effort to set up military courts to secure effective arms and food supplies. When a truce was concluded between the Arabs and the British authorities, Qawuqji, who in the meantime had been surrounded by the British forces, was permitted to pass through the encirclement with all his men. The non-Palestinian Arabs left Palestine. Qawuqji himself returned to Iraq and began to engage in violent anti-British activities, with the result that ultimately, under British pressure, the Iraqi government prohibited him from engaging in political activities, and in January 1937 exiled him to Kirkuk. In 1941, however, he was back in Iraq and a leader with the Mufti of the Iraqi revolt against the British. A British intelligence report of December 1, 1941 declares that he was the militant member of the Mufti's headquarters, and contacted the Iraqi army, raising from this source arms, ammunition, and the facilities to train men for guerrilla warfare. In command of a desert unit, he was in retreat with his men to Deir-ez-Zor, and thence to Palmyra in the Syrian desert in July of 1941, when he was attacked and severely wounded by machine gun fire from British planes. He was removed to Aleppo and thence flown in a German aircraft to Athens and finally to Berlin. Throughout the war, Qawuqji assisted in recruiting Muslims for the Nazi troops. For a period, he carried through this task from headquarters in Paris and enrolled North African Muslims. During his sojourn in Nazi Europe, Qawuqji came into conflict with the Mufti. When the air raids in Berlin became very heavy, Qawuqji moved to Dresden and was captured by the Soviets following the collapse of the Nazis. Interned by the Russians, he escaped to Berlin. Page 47. Early in 1947, and found a way of reaching Paris on February 20, 1947, together with his German wife and an Arab attendant. Unhampered by the French, he enplaned for Cairo. The plane landed at Lydda Airport, and although the British had a reward out for his capture, he was not arrested and proceeded to Cairo, Tripoli, and finally Syria. Accepted as a national hero, the Syrian government gave him a house. General Taha Pasha al-Hashimi. General Taha Pasha al-Hashimi, the Chief of Staff of the Arab Army of Liberation, appointed to his post by the Arab League, is a native of Iraq with long associations with Nazis, fascists, the Mufti, and terrorism. A graduate of the Ottoman Staff College, General Taha has had wide experience in the Middle East, serving first with the Turks, later with the Syrians, and finally with the Iraqi government. He was Defense Minister of Iraq from 1938 until February 1941, when he was appointed Prime Minister, a post he held for only 3 months. Taha was the co-founder of the Pan-Arab Nazi Club, Al-Mutana in Baghdad in 1935. He was co-founder and president of the Iraqi Society for the Defense of Palestine, which prepared Arabic broadcasts for the Berlin radio. This work brought Taha in close touch with the German embassy and the Nazi agent, Dr. Amin Raweha. The latter was interned in Rhodesia by the British, together with Jamal Husseini. Taha also was close to the Golden Square, a pro-fascist group of army officers who were the chief backers of the Rashid Ali revolt. As Minister of Defense, Taha made every effort to prevent Iraq from breaking off relations with Nazi Germany if war broke out. He put active pro-Nazis in key positions and played a very significant role in the interference in political affairs of Iraqi army officers. According to the British intelligence report of December 1, 1941, Taha undoubtedly did more than any other Iraq politician to further both the German and the ex-Mufti's plans in Iraq. Following the collapse of the Rashid Ali rebellion, Taha moved to Turkey, where he remained until 1946. Sheikh Hassan Salameh. Sheikh Hassan Salameh, known as Abu Ali like his leader the Mufti, has an active Nazi record, served Arab Nazi battalions, and emerged with the rank of Major General. A native of Palestine, having been born in Kula, a village near Lydda, Abu Ali has a long record of terrorism and brigandage. He was active in the 1936 rebellion, commanded the Arabs in the Ramel area, and has a long record of terrorizing, in particular the Arab town of Jaffa. In 1939, he left Palestine for Syria and Iraq, where he entered an officers' training school from which he was graduated. He was a member of the Mufti's suite in Iraq. In 1942, he appeared in Turkey, and thence made his way to Germany, where he joined the Arab Nazi battalions. In October 1944, having in the meantime received the rank of a German major, he was parachuted into Palestine and dropped near Jericho, together with another Arab Nazi and 2 German officers, for the purpose of organizing sabotage and conducting fifth column activities. His 3 parachutists were caught, but he escaped. Through Palestine, he finally made his way to neighboring countries, and in 1946 he established contact with the Mufti's agents in Syria and started to organize Arabs for action in Palestine. The Mufti wanted to give Abu Ali a high post in the Army of Liberation, but was voted down by the Arab League. In December of 1947, on an assignment from the Mufti, Abu Ali returned to Palestine, allegedly with the 2 German officers, with whom he had parachuted into Palestine in 1944. He is now in charge of operations in the Jaffa area. The Balkan Black Legion. On March 12, the British delegation at the United Nations informed members of the Security Council that a band of up to 500 Yugoslavs, presumed to be Bosnian Muslims, were reported en route to the Lydda district during the first week of March. Page 48. These represent a portion of Muslims from Bosnia and Herzegovina in Yugoslavia, who fled their country and found asylum in Syria. These Yugoslavs were members of the Balban SS Black Legion, organized by the Nazi SS during the war with the help of the Mufti. The Hanjar Division, as they were known, acquired a reputation for terrorizing the conquered populations of Nazi Europe. These Nazi collaborators have been serving in the Arab countries as training instructors, technicians, and even officers for the Army of Liberation. Conclusion. The defeat of the British-equipped volunteer armies of the Arab states is implicit in the announcement by them that they would soon send their regular forces to occupy Palestine. But much more significant is the fact that the British have not given up their intention of continuing the fight against the United Nations decision on Palestine. This was clearly revealed on April 28 by Foreign Minister Ernest Bevin, when he refused to answer a question in the House concerning threats of armed intervention by the Arab states, pending a final UN decision on the future of Palestine. Asked whether Britain would suspend armed shipments to Arab countries until the Palestine issue had been settled, Mr. Bevin said that he had no intentions of interfering until he had received the decision of the United Nations. Asked what the British position is with respect to the threat of King Abdullah to occupy Palestine, in the light of the military training, equipping, and financing of the Transjordan forces by Britain, Foreign Minister Bevin said, "My attention has been drawn to press reports of April 23 on the declaration by King Abdullah in this sense. I do not see what steps under the terms of our alliance with Transjordan this announcement requires. As regards the Arab Legion, the intention is that withdrawal from Palestine should be completed before the termination of the mandate. His Majesty's government is obliged by the treaty to pay a subsidy to Transjordan in respect of the Arab Legion, and provide certain British service personnel for service with that force. This obligation will still be in force after the termination of the mandate in Palestine. The treaty provides, of course, that nothing in it shall prejudice the rights and obligations devolving on either party under the UN Charter. The test of the strength of the United Nations is whether it will take the initiative in ending these intrigues against justice and peace by implementing without further delay the November 29 decision.